On today's show, Dr. Jim Meehan joins us to discuss the facts about the false models that spread the fear of the coronavirus and the inflated number of cases and deaths that perpetuated the fear that falsely justified your government's decision to take away your rights to peaceably assemble, to strip away your constitutional rights.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, it is a very special occasion because it is always ecstasy when Dr. Z is next to me. Dr. Zellner, is it true that you are in fact a doctor?
Well, I'm kind of sort of a doctor. I'm an optometrist, so I'm kind of like a faux doctor, maybe a half doctor, maybe if you blink, I'm a doctor kind of doctor, you know.
Well, we're joined here today with a friend of yours who's a real doctor. This is Dr. Jim Meehan. Dr. Jim, you know Dr. Zellner. Dr. Zellner, you know Jim.
I know him so well. Love the man.
Jim, what kind of doctor are you, sir?
So I am a physician that is trained in ophthalmology. That's my primary training, ophthalmology. I specialized in ocular inflammation and immunology. I continued my training after my residency training, though, and I've also been trained in preventive medicine, interventional endocrinology, and addiction.
Well, we are in the age we call the information age, but Dr. Z, I would argue it's the misinformation age. There's just as much correct information as false information floating around on the interwebs. And so I would like for you, Z, to see if you can ask Dr. Jim the tough questions about the coronavirus, so that way this can be a weapon of mass instruction that only kills fear. So, Z, you've got some tough questions. Try to go easy on our guest.
I mean, Jim, Dr. Meehan, I'm going to get to the addictive part because I wanted to ask you, what about the thrivers that are addicted to the show? But that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole
nother topic. So medically speaking, because you are an MD, that's medically speaking.
And get out the sock puppets because I'm not a doctor.
Who actually should be scared of COVID-19?
Well, so here's the thing about COVID-19. It's another viral illness. Anybody that should be afraid of COVID-19 needs to be afraid of the flu. They need to be afraid of all the other coronaviruses that cause respiratory illness. And that's anybody with multiple comorbidities, anybody that obesity happens to be one of the major risk factors. And that's 1 in 3 children in the United States. That's 1 in 2 almost people in the United States today that are suffering obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, dysregulation of the immune system in any way. Our immune system is our weapons of defense against all of these millions of invading microbes that we're constantly doing battle with. In fact, we're not really doing battle with. We're living with them.
Living with them, right, because they're here to stay, and they're really not designed to kill us. They're designed to live with us and have us pass them along, right? I mean, that's kind of their function.
In fact, if all of the viruses and microbes that live in our bodies, on our bodies, were to disappear, we would disappear. We would be left in extinction. They're so critical to our health. They're important to our ability to digest in the gut microbiome. We are now understanding the importance of the gut microbiome in our overall health. Right now we're spending too much time eradicating viruses and bacteria in our skin. Where every time that you're rubbing that endocrine disrupting toxic triclosan antibiotic soaps and gels, you are actually breaking down some of the microbial barriers that
I want to make sure I get this.
These.
So you're saying that staying home and washing my hands profusely and spraying everything down with Lysol and essentially making myself the most virus-free, almost washing my hands at a level of paranoia is actually the worst thing I could be doing?
It's one of the worst things that you can be doing. Yeah,
Okay.
that is, you're eradicating these important pathogens and microbes that we live with, and we have to learn to live with. They stimulate the health of our immune system.
See, I remember telling you a few years ago, I told you I should never wash my hands.
And you know what? You've held true to it. But the rest of your body, we still need to talk about.
Oh, okay. We'll
talk
find a
about
happy
that.
middle
You know, it's
ground
funny
here.
because I spend lots of money to take these little pills that actually put billions of these microbes into my body. You know, it's here where everybody's running around. We don't want bugs, and yet we spend all this money to get them into us. Okay, so I know you don't know Dr. Fauci personally, Dr. Meehan, but his connection to this gain of function, which is a term that's just now kind of becoming mainstream. Gain of function.
Newsweek reported that
and
he actually
researched,
funded.
he funded the Wuhan lab was doing this.
That's exactly right.
And his connection with the COVID-19, this coronavirus.
Yeah, so Dr. Fauci has a long history of, in my opinion, fraud, corruption, pseudoscience. He's been stealing the ideas of many of his subordinates in the NIH and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. But what we have learned about Dr. Fauci recently is that he has, in fact, violated international treaties against the development of bioweapons or gain-of-function studies. So gain-of-function means we take some kind of pathogen that we identify by taking out of bats or pangolins, some species that grows this virus, and then they bring it into the lab, and they're trying to modify it ostensibly to test some future vaccine or, blockbuster drug.
So you're saying that he actually funded a laboratory that takes bats out of a cave, it wrestles bats out of a cave, brings them into a laboratory, isolates the virus, and then increases the virality or the transmissibility of the virus, actually makes it potentially more spreadable. Why would someone want to do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So they could be wanting to develop a bioweapon. They could be wanting to develop some kind of a pathogen that they anticipate happening at some point in the future. The evidence of this virus, when this genome was identified, decoded, we see significant evidence that the gain of function that was engineered into this virus is one that would not have happened for 800, 1,000 years.
So the guy who's giving us safety tips on how to protect ourselves from the coronavirus knows more about it than anybody else because he created it. Would that be a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement. In fact, I think it's a statement that is so fair and so true that Dr. Fauci should be charged with treason, fraud, cooperation with our enemy, in fact.
Wow. Okay, Jim. So the two big things that we're told from the CDC, the almighty CDC,
the CDC,
and Dr. Fauci,
is
to wear a mask and to stay away from people.
Right.
What are your thoughts on those two things? Wearing a mask and the new term now. We have, every day, social distancing.
I hate this term.
Yeah. So I social distancing. If you're going to maintain, 6 feet of distance, that's probably the only thing that we need to be doing. Masks have no scientific basis to support community wearing of masks. There's no science. I'm a former medical editor. I edited a medical journal for about 3 years. I learned how to read and discern in the scientific literature. It's so easy. So much of our medical literature is so full of fraud, bias, corruption, bought and paid for by pharmaceutical industry that want to produce something that supports their drug. When you look at the literature, the science evaluating the effectiveness of masks, it's non-existent. Most of the studies, almost all of the studies, are done in healthcare workers in healthcare settings. Now, that's a setting in which we have readily available supplies of masks. We use it once, we throw it away. We're trained and we're very disciplined. You're harassed and hazed throughout your training to learn not to touch that mask, not to fidget with it, to resist the compulsion to move it down below your nose or up on your forehead or on your chin, to touch it multiple times. Every time you touch a surgical mask that you've been breathing into, you're contaminating your hands and then you're spreading it. Whether you've got gloves on or not is irrelevant. You're spreading that virus significantly.
And on an emotional level, Z, it makes it weird. The businesses that I own, where we are currently required to wear a mask, it makes it weird. It's hard to have a pleasant interaction.
You know what I've started doing? I've got an old Lone Ranger mask. The eyes, a leather Lone Ranger mask. And so when they say you've got to wear a mask, Dr. Zellner, when you come in, I go, okay, I got a mask.
I love that
so
idea.
I just strap that bad boy on, and I just fire up.
I love this
idea.
silver,
and I come riding in, and they don't know what to say.
I love this idea so much. I want to hug you and help spread the herd immunity. That's what I want to do.
So that's a great point, Clay. I mean, this is the real issue that we're messing up with this social distancing, cowering in our cages and our lockdowns. We are destroying the one thing that really works to improve the health of our community, prevent the transmission, and protect the vulnerable populations. Is we are not enabling herd immunity.
We're not.
Herd immunity is so critical in defeating these kind of novel viruses, whether they're bioengineered, whether they're bioweapons, or they've evolved in pangolins and bats that swap slobber.
If you really are a criminal, Z, who's done some bad stuff, if you're a really bad criminal, we typically put the worst of the worst criminals in solitary confinement. Because we want to crush their soul. We want to isolate them. And I just want to get this information out there so that we can unmask this fear and get back to living. We don't have to hide from the virus till all the businesses and organizations die, till the economy dies. Now, Z, I know you had some tough questions here about the vaccines prepared here for the good doctor. So feel free to just paint them into a corner with the tough questions that people like me who are not doctors want to know.
Yeah. So, Jim, from your knowledge, we talk about these mandatory vaccines. I mean, that's kind of it's starting to creep into the thing, Now we're starting to jerk people out of their homes in certain states. We're starting to do mandatory testing. We're starting to judge-ordered
tracing.
I've got a Form 2 here that allows me to come into your home and jerk you or your children out. You're going to come peacefully, or do I got to tackle you?
We have a guy who went to a park here. Over. We got to arrest him.
It's happening. It's happening.
Yeah.
So what's in these vaccines? Can we trust these vaccines? I mean, I don't want to be too paranoid. I mean, I've had vaccines before, for measles, for polio, for different viruses in my life growing up.
Yeah.
So what's the word on vaccines? Because Trump just mentioned the other day we're close to a vaccine, and yet I hear like Bill Gates is like making some different kind of vaccines.
Yeah, so we're too close to a vaccine. They're fast tracking. The FDA is fast tracking some of these vaccine candidates. There's multiple candidates right now. One of the leading candidates is a vaccine made by a pharmaceutical company called Moderna. Moderna is funded by the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Soros has money in that. By the way, Gates also funded the Wuhan lab in which this virus emerged, this SARS-CoV-2. So he's involved in that.
You could prove that.
Absolutely, it's well documented in the literature. So my biggest concern is a concern that I found many years ago in the childhood vaccine schedule. So that concern is the use of aborted fetal cell lines.
What?
Yeah, aborted fetal cells. So
you're saying
children that were aborted.
How old are these fetuses when they are?
Yeah, so they
babies?
range from 17 months to 3.5 months. The Moderna vaccine is being manufactured using an aborted fetal cell line that was harvested from, and I hate to use that word, but that's the word they use.
Can we call it this? Can we say we have to kill babies and to make the virus?
Hundreds, if not thousands of babies.
So you have to kill babies to make the vaccine.
Yeah, and this is what the public doesn't understand. This is what the Christian community, the faith community does not understand, is the absolute truth that we are using aborted fetal cells that are being injected into our children. Now, not the full cell, but the DNA microfragments, the residual cellular proteins.
So I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
And I have to kill somebody else's potential kid to make this vaccine.
Yeah, so the way these work, so the current, the most commonly provide U.S. childhood vaccines are the chickenpox vaccine. That's in a child that was aborted in the 1960s. The MMR, the rubella component of the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, that is an aborted cell line, fetal cell line, a human aborted baby. That is the host cell that these viruses are grown on for manufacturing. You see, the issue with this is that all of these endemic human diseases, viruses like measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, they grow best, most efficiently with on human cells. When we tried to grow those on chicken eggs, it would create lots of mutations in the cell line. So they have to grow them on human cell lines.
This is bad.
It's horrible. And there's an excellent deposition, a video deposition of Dr. Stanley Plotkin. He's the father of modern vaccines. And in that deposition by Aaron Seary, an excellent attorney, very knowledgeable in vaccines and the science, Dr. Plotkin admitted to, in the development of the rubella vaccine, 76 children were aborted. These were elective abortions before they finally got the tissue that they needed to produce this, to manufacture this cell line, to get a viable candidate for this human cell line. And here's how that process goes. It was described in this video deposition. So this is Dr. Stanley Plotkin under oath. He has to tell the truth. He told the truth. It's also published in a lot of the scientific literature. On the moment of that child's entrance into the world, it's captured in a saline bag, a bag full of saline fluid. It basically drowns, and then it's quickly moved to the laboratory where it is vivisected, and its tissues are torn apart.
Vivisected? What is vivisected?
Means that its body is torn apart. It's cut up.
So we have to
so that
mutilate
they can harvest
babies to make the vaccine.
That's exactly what's been done. That's what's being done. Now, in the United States and many European countries, laws in the early 2000s came out to prevent that from happening.
So how's it happening?
Well, it's being done in countries like China, where they don't have the same laws, regulations, where they're governed by Communist Chinese Party that just simply doesn't care about their own citizens. They certainly don't care about
So Dr.
children.
Fauci, under Dr. Fauci's direction, we're violating U.S. laws by exporting the creation of viruses by taking bats out of caves and then isolating the viruses and increasing their virality, making it more transmissible. And then the only way to stop the spread of the viruses that Fauci is funding and thus creating would be to abort babies and to require everyone to have a vaccine that is comprised of mutilated babies.
Yeah, that's essentially it in a nutshell. That's what's happening here.
Oh.
And I think it's, I'm a fully devoted follower of Christ, and I believe that our children are being, medically defiled, and I believe they are being spiritually defiled. When I have 5 children of my own, and before I understood this science, before I understood what was happening, because in medical school they don't teach you this stuff. You basically memorize the CDC recommended schedule. You're not taught anything about the potentially dangerous ingredients like aluminum adjuvants, like the aborted fetal cell materials. Nothing is said about that. I've actually debated pediatricians in multiple states now in which they weren't aware of this themselves. They almost looked at I had to pull out the varicella, the chickenpox package insert that's created by Merck and show them that cell line from an aborted fetus is right there in the package insert.
I have a confession. I heard you on a local radio show where you've been doing a lot of interviews, and I thought you were crazy. So I went and looked up the terms you were referencing. I looked up the different cases you're talking about, the testimonies you're talking about, and everything you have said checks out, and it bothers me. But Z, it seems like Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci are really pushing for a vaccine. I mean, it seems like they're just pushing you for why would... I guess, Z, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, Bill Gates and Fauci.
Well, I think it's self-evident. But Jim, what do you think about that? I mean, we've got Gates and Fauci, 2 men that have obviously funded the creation of this virus, and now they're scrambling around, and now everything you hear from Fauci is stay in your homes until we get a vaccine.
Right.
Until we get a vaccine.
Until we get a cure now.
You have vaccine cure, vaccine cure, vaccine cure. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so my take on that is always follow the money. At the very, most intuitive level that everybody will understand, it's about the money. We're talking about with this, this pandemic, this fear-mongering that's going on, this exaggeration of this crisis. Never let a good crisis go to waste. That's what's happening here, and they're trying to fear us into submitting to a vaccine that they want to mandate. They want to mandate it for every human being on the planet. So we're talking about 7 billion
doses.
Doses, potential customers, 2 doses is what
I
they're
have
planning.
read that the vaccines, because they're going to be fast-tracked, will not be tested with the same level of and you know the terms more than me, but there's a certain level of testing that has to go on before the FDA approves a drug. With the fast track, they just sort of skip that, and I've heard that it actually could cause problems to the human body. These actual vaccines made from aborted babies could cause a lot of problems. Am I correct? Am I getting that right?
You're so correct on so many levels, and there's so much complexity in this. Here's the issue: is number one, coronavirus is a highly mutable virus. It's going to change rapidly, like the flu, like influenza viruses do. It's going to it has traditionally escaped any form of vaccination. In fact, when we tried to create a vaccine in 2003, 2005 timeline after the original SARS epidemic, we tried to create a vaccine for coronavirus back then. The vaccine actually was so lethal. Fortunately, we did the animal studies back then, and when we did the animal studies, they infected ferrets, they vaccinated ferrets, and then they reinfected them, exposed them to the SARS virus. That killed the ferrets. It created what's called immune enhancement. It's a syndrome that creates an abnormal, extreme cytokine storm, an inflammatory storm in the bodies when they were exposed to the antigen. Now, in this modern age with SARS-CoV-2, we're making the same mistakes, but we're not even doing the animal studies. They went directly to human studies in Washington State with 45 human volunteers. The FDA is fast tracking this vaccine. Here's the other thing that you've got to understand is there is no medical liability to the manufacturers of these vaccines. They have been given immunity to liability. So if that vaccine kills you, harms you, your children, you will have no recourse. You will not be able to sue the manufacturer. So this is something that's been since 1986 with the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, has been a problem with our vaccine industry. It removed a critical check and balance, the check in the courts, the ability to sue a manufacturer for the injuries that it caused to your child.
Wow.
When we remove that check and balance, we have created not only a massive profit stream for the pharmaceutical companies, but we have removed the critical checks and balances. Now, when that law was passed in 1986, there was an agreement that the Health and Human Services would watch over, they would oversee to make sure that in the removal, they recognized that the removal of this critical check and balance could have unintended consequences, and children could be damaged from the fact that we're not doing the same level of gold standard random controlled clinical trials using inert placebos. We don't do that. That's the other thing. I'll come back to that because that's such an important thing to understand. We're not doing the science. But when we remove those check and balance, HHS was supposed to do annual reviews of the vaccine adverse event reporting system to see if there were any signals that we were causing more damage in the children that were receiving these untested or inadequately tested, never proven safe vaccines. Now, they hadn't done those studies. For 30 years, they have failed to do those studies. And we found that out about a year ago when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. filed a Freedom of Information Act. And they sued the federal government and said, show us your oversight reports. We want to see evidence that you've been doing the safety testing that you said you would do. That was a requirement of the law. And it was found that they had done none. Not a single amount of oversight. They're not checking the safety of this vaccines. And this is what infuriates me. And that's why, a lot of the stuff I talk about, you don't hear about, because when you talk about the things that I talk about publicly, you are going to be attacked by the medical establishment. You're going to be threatened. You're going to be harassed. The pharmaceutical industries have immense amounts of money, and they'll do almost anything to shut down voices like mine. So, by the way, I'm completely happy, sane. I'm not suicidal in the least. So, if something happens to me, do an autopsy and look for the other 2 bodies, because I will have taken.
Here's the deal: you're Irish.
I'm
Irish. I'm
always armed. I'm well trained.
Oh yeah, you're kind of a bad dude, and now your youngest is getting ready to go into the Marines.
Yeah.
So you got several Mehans coming at you now.
But, God did not give us a spirit of fear and
no,
timidity,
he didn't,
but
of course.
Power, love, and a sound mind. So that's why I rise.
Absolutely. Okay, Jim, you threw a lot at our listeners. A lot of big words, a lot of fancy terms.
Sorry about that.
No, I love it. But give us as we're recapping, as we're ending this, someone listening right now going, okay, but what do I do?
Right.
I mean, okay, but what do I do? I'm living in mid-America. I'm hunkered down in my
go to church this weekend? Do I not?
In my bunker. I mean, I'm not answering the door for fear of someone breathing on me. I mean,
should I go to the store? Should I not? What do I need to do?
Right. It's a great question.
So okay, give me the practical steps that everyday Americans
Let's do it.
should do, could do, would do.
Right. So you need to get out. You need to get out in the sun. One of the most beneficial nutrients for prevention you can create for free just by exposing yourself to the sun, and it's vitamin D. Vitamin D is such an important stimulant and support of the immune system. It's involved in so many processes. You also need to be, and you should get your vitamin D to levels that if you had a blood test, it's about 60 to 80 nanograms per deciliter. So it's a good level. A few minutes in the sun every day will give you that. You may have to supplement to get to that level. Vitamin C. Vitamin C has been proven in multiple countries now for its benefit in improving the function of the immune system and being a countermeasure against COVID-19 and every other virus. So you also need to just get out in nature. You need to absorb, you need to get all of those microbes back in your system.
It sounds
in your
like
body,
you're saying we
diversity.
shouldn't be isolated in our homes by
It's
ourselves
the worst
wearing
thing
masks.
that you can be doing. The other thing is we have to understand the impact of our mental health on the health of our immune system. When you're depressed, your immune system is depressed. If you're fearful, if you're cowering in your home and you're just terrified of this virus that's been fear-mongered, it's been completely exaggerated in so many ways, then you are depressing your immune system. Get out.
See,
walk.
that's why I don't look at mirrors. I don't want to get depressed. I don't want to be afraid.
Oh,
that's why
your
I
mirror
ban
is your
mirrors.
favorite picture in your house. Your poster of Tom
Now,
Brady.
seriously, I want to share.
Stop
I
it.
have one little fun question I have. It could be I told you so, because you were talking about this on one of the shows.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people have talked about this. This hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
I know somebody by the name of Tracy Trost, who's not a friend of mine, but he's a very good friend of a lot of people that I know. He goes in with the coronavirus, which he really did have. And he was told by Dr. Fauci, don't take the hydroxychloroquine. It hasn't been proven. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull an all-nighter. John's going to pull an all-nighter. Jonathan Kelly's going to do the research. We look at this, and we find right there on the National Institute of Health website, and this is the website that is where it publishes the findings of Dr. Fauci and the team.
Right.
I'm reading an actual excerpt, and Andrew will put this on the notes when we edit it. It reads, chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus infection and spread.
Right.
And I'm going, wait a minute. He just said on the press conference a few weeks ago that we shouldn't wear a mask in public, and now he's saying that we should wear a mask.
Right.
He was saying that we shouldn't. In 2005, he said we should use hydroxychloroquine, which is a malaria drug that's been around forever. And then on TV, he says we shouldn't. He says to President Trump, we shouldn't shut the borders. It's not going to be that bad of a virus. Then he says it's going to be a bad virus. Can we trust Dr. Fauci?
Absolutely not. So, that 2005 article research that was done that demonstrated that the SARS, the original SARS-CoV-1 was potently inhibited by chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine came right out of the National Institute of Health when Fauci was a director. So the fact that he knows that science, when he threw shade and tried to diminish the efficacy and the important countermeasure that hydroxychloroquine plus zinc plus azithromycin has become, that has been clearly shown in multiple studies now in multiple countries to be a very potent inhibitor, preventative and an acute treatment. And it's what's keeping people off of the ventilators. The ventilators were a mistake. That was a mistake, a medical mistake. We've medically mismanaged a lot of these patients. We didn't understand the pathophysiology of this disease process, and letting them decompensate and go to a ventilator has been a big part of the deaths that have occurred in the ICU and mechanically ventilated patients. Hydroxychloroquine is a safe and effective drug. We've actually, in this modern era of COVID-19, we've actually demonstrated that it is more safe than we even believed previously.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. And Z, maybe you have a take on this. LiveScience.com, as well as CNN and you see it on Fox, they're all reporting that 88% of the patients who went on a ventilator in New York died.
That's right.
88%.
88%.
88%. And we're hearing now that according to Forbes, 66% of the people who have recently acquired the coronavirus, the COVID-19, they haven't left their homes. So it would appear to me from what I'm hearing as though Dr. Fauci has been intentionally misleading America. He's saying don't use hydroxychloroquine because he knows it will cure people or treat people. He says use a ventilator because he knows it will kill people. Right. He says we shouldn't shut the borders because he knows that we maybe should shut the borders. He says you should. Right. He said you should wear a mask because he knows you shouldn't wear a mask. Z, what's your take on this? You're a doctor. You're an entrepreneur.
It's
you
hard.
own a bank.
Listen, here's the deal. I love facts. Trying to assume what a man's intentions are is not my game.
Okay.
And so, there's a lot of coincidences. There's a lot of issues that point to misinformation.
Okay.
And that's a problem with this so-called pandemic right now, is that there's so much misinformation. Dr. Birx, who was mentored by Dr. Fauci, she so lovely says, appointed by Dr. Obama, said in an article this week that she's been on the podium with Dr. Trump. Oh, yeah. She's the one that cited the UK study, which is the Abdul Latif Jamil Institute from Neil Ferguson.
And if you Google search Dr. Birx, CDC, you can find this article very easily.
And now she says, quote, I can't even believe or rely on the numbers that the CDC is saying.
Here she is saying there's nothing from the CDC that I can trust.
Nothing. And she's saying
thing.
that she thinks that up to 25%, which could be more, could be less, I don't know, of the numbers they're reporting, in other words, cases and deaths from COVID-19, she doesn't believe. And we've had people on our show that have
PAs
and physicians around the country that have said reportedly that we are being forced, we're being encouraged to code people as COVID-19 when we haven't physically diagnosed them as that. And just because someone has COVID-19 and has a heart attack doesn't mean they died from COVID-19.
Dr. Scott Jensen from Minnesota has said that in his entire life he's never been coached how to diagnose somebody with the flu. He's never been coached on how to diagnose a death certificate or to put information on a death certificate. Essentially, what I've been told, and I'm hearing this over and over, and I want to get your take on this, is that if you have any type of flu-like symptoms at all, doctors are being coached to put COVID-19 on there because they get $13,000 coming to the hospital. And because hospitals are being starved for any cash at all, there's sort of a pressure there to get some money coming in because people aren't allowed to come in for elective procedures. I mean, can you break that down?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, one of the things I always say is show me a financial incentive in medicine and I will show you an outcome. So one of the big financial incentives has been this kind of bonus payments of $39,000 for a COVID-19 mechanically ventilated patient, $13,000 additional bonus dollars paid to hospitals for every diagnosis of a COVID-19 patient. So we're creating this disincentive to do it, to use integrity and science. My colleagues that I went to school with, I trained with, they are telling me the same thing. They are being coached. They are being told, and it's right there. Everybody can Google this and find Department of Health directors in various states talking about this exact issue. Man. There's a difference from dying from COVID-19 and dying with COVID-19. Huge percentage of the population is going to have COVID-19. They're overcoming it, but just because you got hit by a car, or you are a cancer patient in hospice and you die with COVID-19 in your body does not mean that you died from COVID-19. But the narrative is, they need the numbers. This whole thing was a boondoggle. It was, we've done this again and again and again. We did it with the swine flu. We did it with Ebola, Zika virus. It's the same narrative trying to be foisted upon the population.
Same narrative written by the same author, Dr. Fauci.
Say that one more time.
The same narrative written by the same author of the narrative, Dr. Fauci.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's the same. And you are saying, you're going on the record saying that you do not believe that the listeners and viewers should trust Dr. Fauci.
Absolutely not. No. And I mean, it starts from the very beginning. You mentioned the imperial model that was used. Let me give you an example of how corrupt this whole thing was. So when we use pandemic modeling, that has to be a peer-reviewed process. Neil Ferguson, the author of that imperial model that was the 2.2 million deaths in the United States.
Who, by the way, I want to make sure we get this because so many people don't know this.
Right.
You're correct about Neil Ferguson. Everything you just said is correct, but I want to make sure the listeners know this part. Neil Ferguson, guys, he has a job. You know, see, a lot of times you give someone a title. You know, you give someone a title, you say, Clay, you're the custodial engineer. You're in charge of the bathrooms. You know, you are in charge of. You say, Andrew, you're in charge of the parking. His title is the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Emergency and Disease. Okay, he's the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics. That's the title. And no one's ever heard that title. That's his job title. Right. And his company was funded by Amazon, his organization. So no one seems to mention at all that Neil Ferguson, the man who made the models that told you to stay home and buy from Amazon, was funded by Amazon. And so before you put the tinfoil hats on, everybody needs to Google search right now, Abdul Latif Jameel, funded by Amazon. And you will see, hidden in plain sight, the connection there. And so Neil Ferguson, you're telling us about Neil Ferguson.
There's 1 degree of separation by all of these people that we're talking about. They're all involved. They're all connected in this web of deceit, fraud, and corruption. Neil Ferguson, the fact that Fauci and Birx selected that imperial model to guide their advisement to President Trump is an indication of their corruption. So that was a non-peer-reviewed model that did not release the code for how he was determining, what were the parameters, what was the code. That was not done. In fact, it wasn't done until about 2 weeks ago, under considerable pressure to have that information released. Neil Ferguson finally released it 2 weeks ago.
And he resigns.
Yeah, well, as he was forced to resign because he was breaking his own policies. He was violating
his own quarantine.
While
having an affair.
While having an affair with his mistress.
Thank you, Neil Ferguson.
And by the way, he was infected with COVID-19. He was not only breaking his quarantine, but he was spreading the virus. And the mistress that he was having an affair with had 2 young children. So this man is... I don't know what to say about him, but here's what I'll say about Fauci and Birx. Fauci and Birx selected an unevidenced. It was a model that was subsequently shown 2 weeks ago to be a complete sham. When it was reviewed by the peer review committees and the code writers, they said this is ridiculous. And by the way, this was after it had been massaged by Microsoft. They had to do some kind of work to
Microsoft.
Yes, Microsoft was.
Bill Gates has. He loves these virus models.
He loves.
He
all
shows
these
them on CBS.
Doesn't Bill Gates have a connection with making the vaccines? Don't Bill Gates?
Yes, he funded. He was one of the major funders
these are all
of the same lab in Wuhan.
No. I'm not a smart guy. I'm not a smart guy. I got to make sure. I got to make sure I get this. I want to get this idea. I want to get this idea because I'm a simple man. The virus was created or funded by Dr. Fauci, and he's the only one with the vaccine. So it's like, here's the problem. Here's the solution. The virus that was funded and created was created by Dr. Fauci, and then he's the one who has the vaccine. And then the panic that forced everyone to stay home and buy from Amazon was funded by Amazon.
Right.
That
can't be conspiracy.
I'll make one correction to that.
Okay,
narrative.
please.
The correction is Fauci didn't fund it. The taxpayers fund it. He used
thank you, and I say that all the time.
He used $7.4 million of taxpayer funds that he illegally moved to fund that lab. It was a violation of international treaties against bioweapon and bioterrorism research. This was what he was funding with our taxpayer dollars. Was considered a violation of the law had it been done in the United States. The fact that he, as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, misappropriated and misused taxpayers' funds to fund that gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, is something that will, I promise you, mark my words.
Put it down here.
He will face charges for that. He should, and he will face charges for what he has done.
I think he needs a mega point for that.
Sir, you get a mega point for that.
I think he needs a mega point.
Anytime someone tells the truth in advance and they're proven
like
right later.
That's a mega point worthy thing. I can't believe you missed that mega point.
We'll give you a mega point, and we'll give you a holy cow.
I think that's appropriate.
Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to have one final question for you, then we'll wrap up today's show. a lot of the pastors, okay, we've got pastors from all over the country who are teaming up right now. It is so exciting to see this. Pastors from coast to coast are learning about the corruptness of the models that predicted the panic. Right. They're learning about the origins of the virus and how Fauci was involved. They're learning about how we shouldn't really trust Fauci or Deborah Birx. They're learning about the forced vaccine that requires aborted baby fetuses. And some of these guys, they want to talk to you, though. Some of these doctors, if someone wants to get a hold of you, sir, are you going to make yourself available, and how do they do it?
Absolutely. This is my calling and my purpose. It's not something I want to do. What I do brings a lot of pressure upon me. It's anybody that speaks the way I do about these things, and I have to be cognizant. Everything I say has to be based in evidence, and it is. I've read it all, and I have it all prepared. If I ever have to go to court, I'll win that court case because the evidence and the truth always wins.
Yep.
So, but the issue that we are facing here is something that is so significant to me, because we are not only are we harming the health of our children with a lot of these. The injection of aborted fetal cells into our children, and or I should say more correctly, microfragment DNAs and residual cellular proteins that contaminate these live virus vaccines. Whoa. Not only are we already doing that to our children multiple times in the first years of their life, but we're getting ready to add another aborted fetal cell line. Look it up. It's HEK 1293. That is the designation. That's how they dehumanize the name of this 3.5-month-old child.
HEK 1293.
Yeah, that's the cell line that was
code
derived
name
from
for baby murdering.
That's right. That's how they dehumanize. That's how we've all been deceived to not realize that there was a human child that was sacrificed and became a contaminating portion of our vaccines delivering to children all over the world. Now it's going to be mandated for every human in the world. And to me, I can talk all day about the science of how that's going to increase autoimmunity, how it's going to increase pediatric cancers, and how we have one of the sickest population of children on the planet today. 54% of children are suffering from one or more 21 chronic diseases in the United States. We have the worst health of any developed nation, and many third world countries are better off than the United States. We're also the most vaccinated country in the world.
If you're listening right now and you want to get in touch with the good Dr. Jim Meehan, make sure that you email me right now to info@thrivetimeshow.com, info@thrivetimeshow.com. I'll make the connection so you can talk to Dr. Jim, vet the facts, talk to him. If you want to do an interview, you can do it. If you want to reach Dr. Zellner, you can't. But Dr. Z, I appreciate you being here.
Oh, well, I love being here too. I'm the most reachable guy in the world. Just nobody wants to talk to me, so that's why.
Are you okay if we end the show with a boom, sir? Are you okay?
I think that's appropriate.
Okay, Dr. Jim, are you okay if we end with a boom?
Yes.
Can you give us a boom?
Now, real quick, that mic
Irish
there,
boom.
That mic is a hot mic, so make sure you take one giant step back before you bring the boom. So here we go.
So not an Irish bomb, but an Irish boom.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There's a little difference.
3, 2, 1, boom! If you attend a church somewhere, I encourage you to go to peaceablygather.com. Again, peaceablygather.com. Check it out. Our good friends at Fox News, they have teamed up to share the good news. We have thousands of churches opening from coast to coast. We have churches opening in Michigan, folks. We have churches opening right now in Illinois. Churches opening up in California. Churches opening up in New York. Folks, the time to peaceably assemble is now. You must use your First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble, or you will lose them. Check out peaceablygather.com today. Again, peaceablygather.com. Join the movement and push your pastors to open their churches now.